Welcome to another episode of Sobering Truths. This is a project of the Arkansas Family Coalition, and our mission is to educate and inform the public about the negative effects of alcohol that are not widely known or talked about. And with me is Miss Iron Stevens, and today we're going to talk about children of alcoholics, and which I am in that group. My mother was an alcoholic, and I know there are a lot of people out there that have been through this, and hope this is helpful. And it's always, to me, it's always, the focus is on the alcoholic.
Right.
And we're kind of forgotten, I think, and it affects children pretty negatively. And in the 80s, there was a woman, and I've got her name written down, and I don't know if I can pronounce it, but her name was Janet Joyce. Her book was Adult Children of Alcoholics. It was a pretty groundbreaking book that, she had studied children of alcoholics, and there were some characteristics. And it's you can get the book on Amazon or wherever, and there's some characteristics she talked about, and the very first one that I read, and a lot of people can probably identify with this, was adult children of alcoholics guess at what normal is.
Yeah, when you grow up in a totally dysfunctional family, you have no basis to know how family life is really supposed to be.
That's true. I would be, okay, how am I supposed to respond to this? A, B, C, or D? It didn't come naturally to me, and it was different. Not all of these will fit you. She's got 13 characteristics on there, but and she goes through them in her book. And another one that they're either, since adult children of alcoholics are either super responsible or super irresponsible. I fall into the super responsible.
The ones I've known have always been super responsible. They were the adults in the family because the adults weren't functional.
Right.
And that's tragic to make a young kid or a teenager have to be the head of the family.
It is. And I think it's, in my case, it was more the neglect, not maybe physically being there, but not being there in spirit, and that's pretty hard. And there's I was doing some research. Common experiences include emotional neglect, unpredictable behavior at home. Like I would always worry about if I heard a siren when I was sitting in the schoolroom, in the classroom, I would think that's my mom has had a wreck, gotten killed. That's pretty hard for a kid to go through. You know, it's not fun.
And I assume your dad wasn't around.
He had died.
So it was only your alcoholic mother, and you didn't have any brothers or sisters, right?
No, not.
So it was just you and an alcoholic mother who was at least partially non-functional.
Right. And, a lot of times, these people, they're just like everybody else, except they have this problem. She was a good person.
Right. And you loved her, just like,
Of course.
Yeah. Kids love their parents even when they're, they have a problem.
Right. And, I often dreamed that somebody would do something, and...
what could you see them doing in your imagination?
I didn't want to be taken away. No kid wants to be taken away from unless it's a horrible situation. It wasn't
It wasn't abusive.
It was not an abusive situation. It was just, I wish somebody would have stepped in and helped her, helped me. We stayed together, and there was no family that stepped up to do that. And I guess I can see why people don't want to get involved, but somebody has to do something for these kids.
Yeah. What do you think about, was Al-Anon and Alateen, were those organizations available when you were younger?
I think they were, but I had no one to guide me to do that, because I wanted to keep it a secret.
Okay, you hit on something else. Why did you want to keep it a secret?
I was afraid of what might happen. Somebody might take me away, and I knew the situation I was in at that time, but I didn't know what would happen if I went somewhere else, or
Yeah.
they took me away, or whatever.
And you didn't know what would happen to your mom either if you left.
Right, right. So that's scary to kids. That's their only comfort, like that. She was really my only family. I mean, I had aunts and cousins, but they were on the periphery,
Yeah.
so to speak.
So that's something that we need to consider when kids are in that situation. There may not be active social services monitoring. What do you do in that situation?
That's why I think we need to get back to God and have people
Closer family ties?
closer family ties and more understanding, and not ignore things.
Almost like, it takes a village, but in some ways it doesn't take a village. It takes
Right.
takes family and friends. But we have been reluctant over my entire lifetime for people to get involved in somebody else's family,
Right.
relatives. That's their family. You leave them alone. Sometimes they might talk to them, pull somebody aside and talk to them. But, families have just not, the extended family has usually just not tried to get involved.
Right, because they might think the alcoholic would get angry, have an outburst.
Or cut all contact, and that doesn't solve anything.
Right. And, I thought, well, after I've gotten older, somebody could have done something and been helping without,
Judging
yeah,
and judging and trying to take over.
yeah, and maybe trying to help her too at the same time, and it takes a lot of effort, but is it worth it? What if, I think about, or there surely kids that are going through this right now.
We know
same
there
thing.
are, because we know the statistics in this book. We've got a lot of statistics about alcoholic families and what happens, with kids and things. So, and there are plenty of statistics out there. I don't see a lot of specific statistics. That's hard to say about what we do about it.
Right.
Without calling in the state. And I'm kind of like you. I just, that is so traumatic
Yeah.
to kids, unless they're being actively abused. And I know people would say this is active abuse, but, there's all stages of abuse. And if a kid really still has loves a parent, that can be even worse than leaving them in that situation.
Right. It would be so traumatic. And there is a lot of trauma. Some kids get PTSD,
Yeah.
and I know when I hear a phone ring, I just jump, and it's something you can't help.
You told me a story a long time ago about you were in the car with your mother and she was drunk and you were driving and you were terrified that you were going to have a wreck.
We were going to Jonesboro to this place, and I tried to stop her. I was 12 years old, and she was just weaving back and forth on that road, and I just knew that was the day I was going to die. And fortunately, which it scared me to death, she was pulled over by a Jonesboro policeman, and had to get somebody to drive us back from the place we were going to. But it was very embarrassing and traumatic. It just did something to me. It just, this is something kids don't need to worry about. Mm-hmm. They don't need to worry about it all. And it breaks my heart to think that there are kids out there now and people just shrug their shoulders and they just promote their alcohol day in and day out.
Because after all, it's everybody's supposed to be responsible for their own behavior. And I hear that, like, love libertarians, but that's what I hear from a lot of libertarians. Mm-hmm. We're not going to stop anybody's behavior because it's your responsibility to act like a big person. And that doesn't always work, does it?
No, it doesn't. And what if it's your loved one that gets in a wreck with someone that's drunk driving? You know, how would you feel if you knew this child got in a car with someone and they got killed or paralyzed or brain damaged or whatever? You know, I think we're responsible.
We're supposed to be responsible for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way. Well, continue on. I didn't mean to get you directed away from your...
Well, as I said, you know, the child's an adult now. They went through all that. And we're called Adult Children of Alcohol. They've got a name for us, ACOAs. And we carry silent wounds like low self-worth, anxiety, depression, or PTSD. All those things can come into play. And some of us become perfectionists.
You think that's from growing up and never really knowing where you are with a parent? You know, I don't know if your mother was, you know, had angry outbursts, but I know some of the people I have known that have grown up with alcoholic parents, they were always afraid to do anything. They were perfectionists because if they thought if they did anything wrong, mom or dad was going to, you know, get mad, angry, throw a fit, possibly hit them or whatever. So they tried to walk a perfect line there.
Right. No, I never had that. I was just worried about accidents or something happening to her and what would happen to me.
So you were the caretaker in the family even as a child?
Basically, yeah. And according to Psychology Today, I've been doing some research. There are signs of relational trauma when your earliest emotional bonds taught you fear instead of love. So I had a lot of fear, you know, and had to overcome that. And then there's support groups like you were talking about, Al-Anon, and then ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. They give people a place to vent and connect and share, and so they won't think, well, I'm the only one. You know, when it's not going to change anything.
No, but it can give you a different perspective on what you lived through.
It can give you a different perspective, and then you can journal. You can, you know, like I like to write, and you can set healthy boundaries. That's one thing you don't set boundaries for people sometimes when you're a child of an alcoholic, because you think that the authority figures, they're always right, that you can't say anything to them.
And then how would you know what's right or wrong? Because you were raised in such a strange situation, these kids are. They don't always know what's right. That's why I think a lot of them get involved with other alcoholics when they get married and when they get up and, you know, get grown and get married. And they'll marry into the same situation they grew up because that's normal. That's what their normal is.
That didn't happen to me, but I guess I'm an oddball. But
very lucky, very blessed.
I ran away from alcohol, and that's why I'm involved in this. I feel like maybe God prepared me for this day, and maybe I can help somebody or a lot of somebodies.
Well, and I think, don't you think that a lot of the kids that grew up with alcoholics, they also use alcohol to kind of suppress the memories, the problems, the hurts, so they actually continue the problem throughout the family. That's what I've read a lot of. What do you say?
I think that's probably true, and I think that happened to my mom because I think she was in California and she couldn't gain weight, and this doctor put her on beer. It's like I've heard years ago doctors put people on cigarettes. One lady
to lose weight.
Yeah, and so she probably found there was a lot of the dysfunction in their family, I believe, molestation and such, and I think that's what happened there.
Well, and plus it is a drug. It gives you a high, takes some of the pain away for a little while, or it doesn't take it away, but it suppresses it. So you've got that drug, then you actually can lose, at least temporarily, a part of the problems that you're living through. It's the worst possible thing to give to somebody that's, you know, and I cannot believe, I'd love to show them how to gain weight. I can do it, you know, this idea about giving beer to people, no, it's enchiladas and chicken fried steak.
Right. But there's also what's called a laundry list, 14 traits of an adult child of an alcoholic. What I was talking about the authority figures. The first one is we become isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. And that's right on target.
Yeah, well, what happens, when you go to school? And because you've got plenty of authority figures, every bit is an authority figure when you go to school, what happens there?
You toe the line. You don't make trouble.
Now, no matter what a teacher or anybody tells you, see, I could see that opening kids up to forms of abuse. If you are a child of an alcoholic and an adult that you're supposed to think is a leader, can do things that you might not protest against because you're so used to wanting to have that leadership.
Yeah, and we're, I'm old enough. We were taught we respected authority then, and I think you should do that. But people, you're opening up a whole big can of worms when you think you can handle it and you can drink in front of your children. I knew someone that they didn't see that they're drinking. The son was an alcoholic, and they saw no connection
To their drinking.
And I do not understand that.
Maybe we should start, instead of calling it alcohol, maybe we should start calling it first drug. Because we all know that with kids, that as alcohol is the first drug, for them, for the vast majority. Well, a lot of that, comes directly from the parents. They see the parents drink. Well, of course it's okay. My parents drink. And you never know, because I think there's also a genetic component, you never know when that person is going to get addicted to it.
Right. I did read, and I didn't bring it with me. I did read that genetics account for up to 60% of the alcoholism.
I tell my kids, anytime you have alcoholism in your family, you need to run like the dickens away from it because you've already got that genetic propensity, to possibility to have, that problem.
Right. And I think we discussed this a little bit before in another podcast. Movies, television, it's either the funny drunk, like
Otis
on Andy Griffith. Everybody, ha, 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 he goes in there and gets the key and locks himself in, and when he gets sober, he gets out. That's not a good lifestyle.
Yeah, and he didn't have kids either. He was married, but he didn't have kids.
He didn't have kids.
But I'm like you. As I got to be an adult, I didn't find that funny at all. I didn't find Otis a funny character at all. I did not like those episodes where he was in there because of that reason. I don't like watching drunks. I didn't like Foster Brooks. Yeah. I didn't really think about it when I was younger because, he's been out for a long time. Most people probably don't have a clue who Foster Brooks was. But he was a comedian who built his comedy around being a drunk.
Yeah.
And I can remember watching, the various shows that he was on because he wasn't like on a lot of TV, movies and sitcoms and stuff. He was kind of like on the vaudeville and like Ed Sullivan and those kind of variety
Johnny
shows.
Carson.
Yeah, and I did not find him funny at all. I just thought it was disgusting. But we've always, made them a subject of ridicule or laughing at, like that was going to be some, really a joke, and it's not a joke.
It isn't. It's deadly serious, and even back, I think it was in the 30s, the movies about the Thin Man.
Yeah.
Myrna Loy and can't remember the gentleman's name.
William
Powell.
Yes. Two of us.
Yeah. He was a drunk. He married her. She was a socialite, and all they did was stay in the fancy clubs all night and sleep all day, and wow, what a lifestyle.
Yeah, and that was common back in the 30s. I mean, it was everybody walk into a house and the first thing they did was hand you a martini or whatever. So it was always accepted, and really, what's the difference between being accepted and pushing it?
Yeah.
All of these people seem to be really drug pushers, of the alcohol.
I like that, drug pushers, because it is a drug.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And somebody told me that when they went up north, they don't, like down here we ask if you want tea or Coke, and they ask you if you want a beer. It's just a natural thing.
Nasty stuff. I'm sorry, I don't care who that offends. It's nasty stuff.
It really is. And even nowadays, we were talking about the movies in the 30s and whatnot. Even nowadays, I'm a conservative. You're a conservative. We have watched Fox before and listened to conservative radio. I am so tired of them all joking about drinking.
On the panels.
Yeah, they just joke about it and
Yeah, it's Friday evening. It's time to go out and hit the bars. No,
Yeah.
it's not.
yeah,
We go out and hit Mexican restaurants or IHOP.
yeah. But yeah, it's a very serious subject, and
Yeah, please continue on those because I think they're so important.
the laundry list, and you all could look that up. It says we become approval seekers and lose our identity in the process. Yeah, I can see that about myself too. I have to be aware of that, and we're frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. Angry people, yeah, I don't do angry people.
What do you think what do you think that's a result of? Did your mother get angry? Did she have an anger problem?
No, she didn't. I guess it's just tied in with the
People pleasing?
people pleasing and the authority figures. I guess being a female, back when I was going to
Yeah.
school, we didn't. Now they will beat the teacher up, and and I was afraid to chew gum in class. I thought I'd committed a cardinal sin if I chewed gum.
Yeah, and I was the one who blew the whistle on the first thing got stuck in the corner. So
Yeah,
two different types of children here. We didn't have the alcohol in our family, and you did, and it really does make different types of children. If you've taught long enough, you can usually almost always spot those kids that have real family problems and that may be related to drinking. In the classroom,
Right.
Because you look down this laundry list, and you already see that as their children, and can you imagine the horror when it's so possible? I remember when I grew up, how much fun it was, just running around the neighborhood. And now I did not have a lot of kids to play with, but I had a lot of stuff I could do, and I didn't have to fear going in. I didn't have to fear, what life was going to be like when my parents came home or anything. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I saw these kids in the classroom didn't want to go home. And that's heartbreaking.
it is. It is, and I think there's more of it today. And I don't know. I just worry about the kids. It's just getting worse, and nobody's stepping up to help them.
Well, it's getting worse because I think and of course, we're a Christian organization, so let's call it. We've got so much more open sin. Years when I was growing up, I know we had people who did bad things. It wasn't okay back then. People had a sense of morality, and you were judged, whether, anybody likes that, you were judged on your behavior and your family and stuff like that now, because that kept people in line more. Mm-hmm. And now everything's okay. What you want to do is okay. What, your truth is maybe your truth. It's not my truth. There is no firm foundation anymore for a lot of these kids and a lot of the families. And it's going to continue to get worse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Because I don't think there's any mechanism in society that can fix this, except I think it's a spiritual issue, and I don't think it can be fixed without basically a totalitarian government, breaking our backs.
Right.
Because this is something that's inside us.
And we don't want to do that.
No.
We want it to come with love and patience.
As I told my kids when I first started teaching, and I had an interesting crew, and they were high school. And I told them, I said, there is no way for us to keep people to act correctly. I said, you can't have a policeman follow everybody around. I said, you have to develop that internal mechanism that compels you to act correctly, to act keeping other people's interests, not just you. And I said, because there's no other way to do that. And this is the problem that I see here anymore. We've just removed all that.
Every man for himself.
Exactly.
The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you.
Becomes do unto others before they do unto you.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Oh, yeah. Let's see, we either become alcoholics, marry them, or both, or find another compulsive personality, such as workaholic, to fulfill our sick abandonment needs.
Yeah.
So
And what you've grown up with, you know.
Yeah. We live life from the viewpoint of victims, and we are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. Like I say, not all these will apply to you, or
Not all of them apply to everybody.
right. We have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it's easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. This enables us to not look too closely at our own faults, etc. We get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. That might be one of mine.
Yeah.
We become addicted to excitement. I don't know about that one. We confuse love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and rescue. We have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and have lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurts so much.
Yeah, I've known that with friends
Yeah.
who came from alcoholic families. They were just, not all of them, but some of them were just damaged. So they needed some. We just don't need to have kids in that situation. We need to be decent families, like I was talking earlier to Bob about. There aren't going to be enough prisons in the world to keep us all on the straight and narrow.
Right.
And the same thing with this.
And another thing, if you try to help a kid like that, don't give them the feeling that you're looking down on them or their family member that's an alcoholic, because basically we're all in the same boat. We've all got our things. And I didn't like that feeling. If people knew that about my family, me and my mom, it was... It made me feel icky,
Yeah.
And
It can make you feel like you're inferior or they think you're inferior. Nobody wants to feel that way.
no, that's true. I think we got 2 or 3 minutes left. I was going to tell you the rest of these. We judge ourselves harshly and have a very low sense of self-esteem. I can say that I judge myself harshly sometimes.
I know you do. You're a much better person and a much more gifted person than what you claim you are.
Alcoholism is a family disease, and we became now that's one thing I have a problem with about it being a disease, and I feel like I have a right to say this since I've been through all that. I don't believe it's a disease. I don't know how you feel about it.
No, I would agree with you. We've turned it into a disease because that means we've made these people helpless. Well, they can't help it because it's a disease. No, it's not a disease. They actively choose to be this way. Yes, they may have a genetic predisposition, but alcohol is active. You have to go down there and get the alcohol. I've heard an interesting comparison between people who are overweight and people who are alcoholics. It's still an excessive problem for most people. Alcoholics can give up alcohol. People cannot give up food.
Yeah.
So, they are not, I'm sorry, I agree. It is not a disease except in the way that it, you may have a genetic propensity to it.
Right. And we don't need to be advertising it and shoving it in their faces and painting a picture that it's just all roses and cream and everything.
Yeah. Beautiful life.
Yeah, beautiful life.
Sitting on the beach, the Corona beer advertisement, sitting on the beach in the tropical sun and the things like that, and it's just wonderful, and it's not.
Well, Iris, we need to wrap up, and you want to tell them about our booklet?
Yep, this is the booklet that Bob has developed. It's the cost of alcohol. It's got incredible statistics in it that most people never see in one sense. We'll have a newspaper article or something that talks about a few of these. It's pages of topics that we don't see together.
And it's free.
And it's free. And Bob's phone number is 870-910-0464. You can call that number, and he will make sure you get a copy of the booklet for you and whoever else you want it for.
So, folks, hope that you've enjoyed this podcast of Sobering Truths. We tried to bring you some sobering truths. that most people don't hear. And we will look forward to you watching our next podcast, which will be coming out soon.